This is quite an interesting survey. I know that it's steady at 51-49, and that's roughly where we've been for months and months talking about it. But underlying it are some very interesting numbers, including, is the coalition ready to form a government? That's the view that you were asked about.
Yep.
What do you make of that number?
Look, there's a couple of things around the headline numbers which I think are important. So if there was a message that came out of Christmas for Labor, it was the government were in serious trouble. But there was a corresponding message that the coalition weren't going to sleepwalk into government. Nothing about that has changed. And as you've said, this is just being an ongoing thing. So at the risk of sounding repetitive, we're talking here about the same thing we've been talking about for months, is all the indicators are that a hung parliament is still probably the most likely outcome. What is interesting is the separate question we did ask. Now, you might recall we asked a similar question of Labor last month, which was whether voters believed that the Albanese government deserved to be re-elected. And that was, that was at a record low. There was only a bit of people thought they deserved to be re-elected. So on this question, we asked whether the coalition if people were confident the coalition were ready to govern. And that wasn't particularly good news for Peter Dutton either at 55%. And I think what you're seeing here is the underlying explanation for why the coalition have not been able to break through that 40% barrier, which is what they need to do to win an election.
Peter Dutton said in his interview with Peter Stefanovic that the policies will come later in the piece. We need to do it in the campaign when people are paying attention. Is that the opportunity? Is that the chance for him to lift that?
Well,
lift that number?
It already is later. Right? I mean, they need to start putting some flesh on the bones, you would have thought. I think that having an election in May, considering the expectations were April, having that extra time for Labor, if you have expectations in the community that there was going to be an election, that's more time for people to focus on Peter Dutton. So I don't think this gives him an advantage at all. I think there's going to be pressure prior to the election campaign starting to start building a sharper economic narrative and putting some shape around what's on offer, because the focus is going to turn back on him.
To reassure people that they are ready, and there are some green shoots there, as you reported, for Labor, in terms of the Prime Minister's approval, in terms of his lead over Peter Dutton as well.
Look, yeah, that's a positive sign for the Prime Minister. Obviously, that's the best number he's had for 6 months, and he's now ahead of Peter Dutton for the first time since September last year on his approval ratings. Remembering, though, that those aren't the numbers that decide an election outcome, and the Labor primary vote is still at 32%. It cannot win. I don't care what people say. It cannot win an election on 32%. It did last time, but if you recall, that was on a comparatively low primary vote for the Liberal Party as well. They're now at 39%. Labor is still at 32%, slightly below their election result.
When you say it can't, do you mean it can't win majority? Or
can't win majority government. Yeah, majority government. That's what we're talking about.
Because you could still, at 32, cobble together.
Look, this is the question. I mean, this is going to be a scramble toward minority government.
Yeah. Who
can cobble together a credible outfit.
Unless there is during the campaign, as we're going to obviously get more regular news polls, and you'll be on to talk about those trends. But if there is a tightening one way or the other, if this bends, which it can do, can't it? I mean, if we start seeing a trend shifting to Peter Dutton, if he reassures people, or to Anthony Albanese in the face off the back of this natural disaster, and sort of saying we're focusing on lives, not votes.
Yeah. It's possible. It could break one way or the other, and it could do that in the campaign. The next news poll is going to be interesting. That Labor primary vote's up a point on the last time. If the next news poll produced another point gain for Labor, you'd have to say that there is a tightening trend, and then Peter Dutton's going to have his work cut out for him.
When you look at Newspoll, and this is a bit of a pat on the back for the survey, and it's in its consistency, because you look at WA, it was bang on. Yeah. Its forecast was bang on, and it has been in the last few elections. You can see why the politicians from the top down look at the Newspoll
Yeah, look, it's
a lot as well as their internal polling, but Newspoll is the one they watch the closest.
It's been very accurate, and it's been a great predictor. Even though we talk about polls being reflective rather than predictive, the poll that we had out on the day of the WA election was bang on. So it gives me confidence to talk to you about the federal numbers, because they've been so consistent. There's been no bouncing around. There's been a small band that it's been up and down in terms of the primary vote for the best part of 12 months. There's stability in those polls, so I think that you can have some confidence that that's really where the electorate's at, which is it's a coin toss.
It is, and it's going to be really interesting the next couple of months to see. Just finally, to me, this raises the importance of that budget to set the scene for their Labor campaign, but importantly for Peter Dutton and his budget reply.
Absolutely.
Because the opposition leader, that is a chance, nationally televised address, and if you're ever going to put some flesh to the bones, that budget reply he's got to nail that.
Absolutely. Look, that's one of the disadvantages. You can argue the case one way or the other about whether it's good for the government having a budget or not. There's reasons why you wouldn't want to have one. There's probably reasons why you would, in terms of controlling the economic narrative. But it gives Peter Dutton a platform that he otherwise wouldn't have had. So that's a disadvantage. Why would you give that away to the opposition? Obviously, Anthony Albanese had no choice, but that is an opportunity. So you'd hope that they're flexible enough to be able to look at that and go, well, maybe some of the campaign policy announcements are going to have to come back into that budget in reply speech.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's a fair point. It's close enough to the campaign. Simon, great to chat as always. Thank you.